Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you may be in this beautiful, beautiful rock spinning through the universe, the cosmos. We are on Terra, also known as Earth, Mother Gaia, and we are coming at you live. This is Ancient Mysteries Unearthed Fireside Chats. So we're going to get into it today. I understand we're doing an episode on Tartaria. So warm your hands by the fire, get a hot cup of cocoa, and let's dive right into it. Chris, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great, Brandon. Thanks so much for the intro as always. And you're absolutely right. We got a whole crazy episode on Tartaria or the Great Tartar Empire. It is a mystery. It is a wild, wild ride. It's a crazy rabbit hole. And we got lots to present to you guys today. We got some compelling video footage. We got some interesting, a lot of independent accounts because Brandon and myself kind of dove into this topic, and it's tricky to find information on it, and it's got to be probably one of the largest historical conspiracy theories that we can find. And I hate using that term conspiracy theory these days because it's just been bastardized, but let's just call it a theory. It's an interesting theory on a completely lost empire, arguably the largest in recent history, larger than the Roman Empire, larger than the Ottoman Empire, larger than any empires we're taught about in history class. The Tartars, or the Tartarian Empire, the Great Tartary, was massive. And so we're going to get into all that today. Buckle up. This is going to be a wild ride.
So in my pursuits of this topic, I was just telling Chris offline that on YouTube, when diving into it, you find a bit about Tartaria, but it's usually more of a historical account that, just being like, we acknowledge that the Tartars existed somewhere around Asia. There was a Muslim people, uh, did great trading with the Ottomans. And you're like, okay, yeah, let's go, let's go. Who are these people that are the great people that time forgot? And then you bounce on a Rumble, and it's like, buckle up. There's a mud flood, and they had zeppelins, and their archaeology, or their structures were all harnessing the ether, and they were like Nikola Tesla style, like we are going to basically create steampunk before steampunk was even a thing. And what we consider kind of Sherlock Holmesy steampunky technology from Hollywood's rendition is kind of what they seem to have, and then wiped off the planet, just and almost scrubbed from history. So that's the story we're going with, Chris. I am so excited for this. I understand you've done some research. It's tough to our audience to find this stuff. So come along, enjoy the ride.
Yeah, they did a really good job scrubbing. I gotta say, these elites or whoever is in charge of writing his story, history. Remember, it is always written by the victors, and even I've got a lot of skepticism with this theory of the whole Tartarian Empire. Certainly, but I'm also keeping an open mind. We'd like to have balance here, and it's important to recognize that throughout history has been rewritten many, many, many times. It's always by the people that conquer and the victors of the wars and whatnot. Let's just look back quickly to, Mexico or Mesopotamia, Mexico and Central America and South America. When the Spanish came, the conquistadors came down and they conquered the Mayan and Aztec civilizations. Well, they burned a bunch of their codexes, almost all of them, which allow us to actually translate and understand all the ancient languages and all the history from that time. They burnt the cities to the ground. They destroyed and pillaged all their major artifacts. And what we see today is just a small fraction of what they weren't able to completely destroy and completely burn. I mean, you hear of the term book burning all the time throughout history, World War II, and many other colonizing times throughout history. We destroy what was there beforehand. So this is not new. We know this happens all the time. So it's important to keep that open mind of this could have been there. And at the same time, we are going to have some healthy skepticism because I do think some of it, I'm like, not sure about that. But you know what? Let's dive into it. Let's see what we got to work with here.
So, Chris, I just want to preface how I came on to this topic. And frankly, so studying mounds and giant skeletons within those mounds within North America, I started to wonder, is there an older civilization? Were there ruins here that were forgotten about? Because, the story and like we said, history written by the victor, it's a much better fit to conquer a continent if there's, nothing there. I was wondering, was there a higher civilization here? Which pushed me on to ancient ruins in the North Americas, because, I want to be like an Indiana Jones, like you, Chris, and travel around the world and looking at ancient sites. And that pushed me onto the world's fairs. And they had these structures, these massive, they looked like ancient Rome or ancient Greece. Huge pools, massive, massive white buildings. The architecture on these was flawless. And when I was looking into the, mainstream view of this, is that they were built with plaster and that, yeah. So look at these. These are, and these world fairs were all around the world. But the ones that I was looking at mainly were, Chicago, and I think there was one in San Francisco. I know the one in Paris is really, 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 really impressive too. But if we look at these structures here, I mean, they had canals and moats and fountains, and the story is that these were just temporary structures that could hold hundreds of people sitting on their balconies, by the way, and then they tore them all down. And when I look at this, I just see awe-inspiring architecture, and I don't see why you would ever want to destroy that. So that led it led me to find out that a lot of people think this is remnants of the Tartarian Empire. And I had no idea what they were talking about. And here we are today talking. So that's what got me there. I'm just curious in the comments below if anyone else has any information on that kind of connection. But Chris, take us away, man. Where are we going now?
Yeah, well, you started us off basically. This is where some of the evidence that we have left over. Some of the main physical evidence is, as always, it's in architecture. It seems to be the only stuff that really ever kind of lasts. We got that with the Great Pyramid, of course, and many of the ancient civilizations from thousands of years ago. Really, all we have left are their structures, artifacts, everything like that. They're really hard to keep and find. This is really all we got. So this is some photographs here of the 1889 Exposition Universelle in France. Look at this dome structure here. It is just, this does not look temporary. The idea that you would build something of such exquisite architecture and complex architecture, no part of that makes sense, that you would have this as a temporary exhibit for a fair like this. I mean, look at this, the Palace of Electricity. Look at the name of it in general. It was already incredible. At the 1900 Exposition Universelle. This is just unbelievably extravagant architecture here, and so on and so forth. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch over quickly to Wikipedia and read you what the mainstream is going to tell you. The Tartary, or the Tartarian Empire. Well, they're not even going to really say that they're an empire. This is what they say. Tartary, or Tartarian in Latin, was a blanket term used in Western European literature or cartography for a vast part of Asia bounded by the Caspian Sea, the Ural Mountains, and the Pacific Ocean, and the northern borders of China, India, and Persia at a time when this region was largely unknown to European geographers. It basically goes on to say, like, ignorance surrounding Tartary's use as a place of name has spawned conspiracy theories, including ideas of a hidden past and mud floods. So basically, as it says here, Tartary became the most common name for Central Asia that had no connection with the real polities or ethnic groups of the region. Basically, there's no real connection to the name Tartary in any ethnicity or any group of people, is what Wikipedia says. Okay, but what about the Encyclopedia Britannica from the year 1771? Well, it actually does say here, I'll read it out for you. This is coming from the Encyclopedia Britannica, so this is what you would consider a mainstream source from the year 1771.
Certainly back in the day, for sure.
Oh, absolutely. So it says, Tartary, a vast country in the northern parts of Asia, bounded by Siberia on the north and the west. This is called Great Tartary. The Tartars, who lie south of Muscovy and Siberia, are those of Astrakhan, Circassia, and Dagestan, situated northwest of the Caspian Sea. The Kalmyk Tartars, who lie between Siberia and the Caspian Sea, the Uzbek Tartars, the Moguls, who lie north of Persia and India, and lastly, those of Tibet, who lie northwest of China. So you can see in this map just below this, from when was this map done? I forget when this map was made, but anyway, it's around that similar time.
Well, it
And
says 1771 right
well,
there.
that says that's from the Encyclopedia Britannica. I don't know if this map is
Mhm.
actually from this, but anyway, it's from that rough time period. I've seen this map quite a bit. This is the most common one that has evidence of the place called this huge place called Grand Tartary. I mean, just look at it. It dwarfs everything else.
Well,
Uh,
and you know what? I thought they said they were Muslim by faith, which might be the predominant of what was being connected with Europe at the time. But what I'm hearing there from that is that obviously it's a massive empire embodying all sorts of people.
Multicultural.
Right. Well, you know, much like most massive successful empires, right? Inclusivity ends up being your strength. So,
Well, I mean, so this is the interesting thing too about the Tartarian Empire. Not only are they well, if they do indeed exist, that they were multicultural, and they're also like multi-religious, and they, as you're saying, had this sort of advanced technology, which we'll get into in a bit later. But they, what I have heard and I've read, and I don't really much info to go on, so I'm just going to mention it, is that they were larger beings. They are actually potentially what we would be considering giants, anywhere from 7 to apparently 13 feet. This is what I've
oh,
read.
really?
This is what I've read on a couple of sites. So it's not the best resource of information. And I'll
Mm.
definitely, that's where my skepticism has to come in because it's like, I read it on the internet. So I don't know.
However, it's funny that my connection to this, you know, I was looking at mounds from large skeletons being in burial mounds littered around North America. That led me to wondering about was there other civilizations here, and then that led to Tartaria. So very interesting that
I
that
was
connection just came up.
There's these photos. There's a lot of stuff on these websites. I'm gonna leave the links below. No, it's not this one. Some of them had a picture, an illustration of a Tartarian, which is basically who is twice the height of a European. I don't have that in this one here, but anyway, I'm gonna read you something really curious. This is actually from good old CIA, and by good old, that's some dripping in sarcasm. I'm not a huge fan of the CIA, but
Yeah, I've heard they had some information on Tartaria too. Interesting.
so let's just read this excerpt from a declassified document well, created in 1957, declassified in 1998. So this is from the CIA. Or let us take the matter of history, which, along with religion, language, and literature, constitute the core of a people's cultural heritage. Here again, the communists have interfered in a shameless manner. For example, on the 9th of August, 1944, the Central Committee of the Communist Party, sitting in Moscow, issued a directive order ordering the party's Tartar Provincial Committee to, quote, to proceed to a scientific revision of the history of Tartaria, to liquidate serious shortcomings and mistakes of a nationalistic character committed by individual writers and historians in dealing with Tartar history, end quote. In other words, Tartar history was to be rewritten. Let us be frank. Was this to be falsified in order to eliminate references to great Russian aggressions and to hide the facts of the real course of the Tartar-Russian relations? And this was no isolated case. In every Muslim area within the USSR, historians, on orders of the Communist Party, have rewritten history to distort the facts so that Russians appear always in good light. Needless to say, historians which present the facts truthfully have been withdrawn and destroyed, so that the present and future generations of Muslims are forever denied the chance of learning the true facts of their nation's past.
So I think this is
Wow.
maybe the document that I was digesting that gave me the impression that they were predominantly a Muslim nation. However, once again, you see a Western country, and I do kind of see Russia as a more Western country. I know that us in the West always, you know, it's us versus them with Russia, but But looking at this, I mean, yeah. So basically, they're saying that Russia, which would have been bordering Tartaria, was very aggressive into maybe eliminating some of those cultures and trying to, cover up their tracks on that, trying to kind of sway their narrative, so to speak, for their country moving forward into the modern era.
And this isn't old news. This is old news. We do this all the time. We being human beings, civilizations, this happens all the Romans did this all the time. We the colonizers to North America. And there's there's also some interesting stuff about the Tartarian Empire being in North America, but that one is even harder to find information on. There is going to be some stuff that comes up through some videos and photographs that will show you of North American architecture that could have been Tartarian, which is really interesting. But regardless, we do this, colonizers do this all the time. So this is, again, rewriting history happens all the time. So if it's been rewritten, maybe the version we have now is just so distorted that any of these things could be absolutely possible. Who the hell knows at the end of the
Well,
day?
you know what,
So,
Chris, too, the other thing is to our viewers is that if you've been taught since birth a story, and then later on you will find out that that story might not have been truthful or built on maybe some assumptions, it's going to be very difficult
yeah.
for us to assume that we were lied to. We don't. Sometimes it's harder to believe that you've been lied to than accept the truth.
Oh my God,
And
yeah.
it's an interesting phenomena that happens to us. And I'm sure, without pointing out any examples, I'm sure that us as a people today, with all the media and social media and screens in our faces, really, um, I'm sure we could find some narratives that maybe won't age the best. So by the time that we're long in the tooth, we might look back and say, "Huh, wasn't that a funny story we were told?" So.
Well, speaking of stories, let's read what the other theory, let's say the more common alternative theory of Tartaria is. And this is just an individual, well, it's called neverwasmagazine.com or neverwasmag.com. So this is really most of the resources you're going to get for Tartaria are all coming from very independent sources. But that's what happens when it's been massively covered up by not only mainstream, but just every institution on the planet. This Tartarian story has been scrub-a-dub-dubbed real well.
Yeah, and you know what? Most of the content we have here, even getting down to like, sacred geometry, it's all done by independent people because
Yeah.
that's just what you have to do. Because otherwise, it would be mainstream and universities would be tackling
Hey,
this.
that's what we're doing here in Ancient Mysteries Unearthed. So let's read this here. This is I'm going to read a couple of these paragraphs because it's a decent summary of really what the main alternative theory is here for Grand Tartary. All right. So the Lost Empire of Tartaria is the most delightful conspiracy theory. It posits that a technologically advanced civilization spanned Eurasia and perhaps parts of North America until as recently as a century ago, which is crazy. That's me speaking here. That this could have been a history that like we talk about the ancient Egyptians, we talk about the Anunnaki, we talk about these ancient civilizations. This would have been right up into the early 1900s for crying out loud. Like that's really recent. So just wrap your head around that one. Um, so, what's left of Tartaria are ornate and seemingly out of place structures from opulent churches in Russia to the Shanghai Bund. Um, the theory stems from disappointment in modern architecture. We once had fabulous Art Deco skyscrapers, Beaux Arts train stations, and Second Empire post offices. Now everything is glass and concrete blocks. What happened? The theory is that the Americans and Europeans didn't build those monuments. They're the legacy of the Tartarian Empire that emanated out of Northeast Asia. Are we supposed to believe that 18th century mapmakers drew a vast Tartaria in the region out of ignorance? Surely not. Tartaria was real, and it was it was the most powerful empire of its time. The Great Wall of China was built not by the Chinese to keep the barbarians out, but by the Tartarians to keep the Chinese out, which is interesting. Opinions are divided about the empire's demise. Some believe a biblical sized mud flood decimated Tartaria, which also explains why so many old buildings have what we now call semi basements. Adherent of this theory suspect monuments like St. Basil's Cathedral in Moscow, Moscow's Red Square, continue tens or even hundreds of meters underground. These are illustrations. These are not real. These are artistic depictions of
I mean,
what
they're real cool though.
I was about to say. They're really awesome. I mean,
I
they
mean, look at that. That's like I want that poster up in my room. That
I
is just
know.
awesome.
They're beautiful. Karoka Studio did the art here. Shout out to them.
And you know what, Chris? This is one
Wow.
of these things that, like, this story, to suggest that the Great Wall wasn't built by the Chinese is going to ruffle a lot of
Oh
feathers,
yeah. Oh
right?
yeah.
Of course, people are going to be like, oh, how dare you? However, really, it's an interesting thought. And to think about all of these buildings that we now, are so common and familiar with, to think that they might continue on below due to a massive flood of mud. Isn't that an awe-inspiring story though? It's
Oh
so
yeah.
I mean this whole topic of Tartaria really doesn't satisfy. It leaves you wanting more and you want to explore, and I just can't get enough of it.
Yeah, well, we're gonna get into some pretty crazy stuff. So these are the photos I showed before. We've already seen these of like the World's Fair and all this architectural examples. Like, so we're gonna get into their technology in a second. But before we do, let's tackle the mud flood. So one of the interesting theories of the actually here's a video that's going to show you some photographs of these buildings and excavations that have been done where all of a sudden they rip out the roads of some of the buildings in North America or even in Europe, and underneath you see way more of this huge structure of the building that's well under the ground. So I'm just going to play the first minute and a half of this video. It's going to show some interesting images, and then we'll move on. We got lots to cover in this episode. Oh yeah, and I'm probably not sharing the sound, so let me just, I don't think the sound.
Classic Chris.
Okay, you gotta stop saying that every damn time. It's also probably not relevant in this video to share the sounds. I don't think this one is narration. Yeah. So here's the text. It says
Paris.
Paris, 1973, major construction reveals a mud flood event from an earlier age. I'm just going to mute this. There's a great mystery surrounding Napoleon and the War of 1812, and also of evidence of advanced technology in the age preceding it. Yeah, I came across a lot of stuff about the War of 1812. I needed to dive a lot deeper into that one, so I didn't have anything to present there. This is another photograph of construction on a road where all of a sudden they dig it up and there's windows, and
Hmm.
here's the text that says old buildings from all over the world show signs of being mud flooded, which is just nuts. Like, there are actually quite a lot of photographs that you see when they dig up these roads. All of a sudden, you can see way more of the building underneath the ground, like way more than that should be. Look at here. Looks like a
Yeah, the half
quarter.
window.
Yeah, it's a half window. It seems impractical compared to the rest of the building. This is, see, the dug up part of that bottom of the house. You're like, oh, there's a whole door underneath the main door. Look at those. It looks like what I see as a lot of basements aren't actually basements. They were supposed to be on the main level. This is another photographic example. This is the text. They say, they speak of a period of 3 years during the war, which is described as the years 1800 and frozen to death. There were strange weather events and calamities that occurred, and millions of people perished from war and famine. Now, I'm not sure. It was at the War of 1812. I'm not sure what they're referring to there.
I think
This,
they might be.
yeah, this is another old Tartarian map. The War of 1812 was a global war that became a virtual Game of Thrones. Yeah, it makes me want to look more into this war. History has been either hidden or altered concerning the events of 1812. That was with Napoleon, was it not? I think.
Yes, that was, Napoleon, he was conquering Europe, from
Um,
what I remember, and yeah, he almost did it, and he crossed the Alps, much like Hannibal did with Rome.
yeah, that's right.
But yeah,
So,
he was very successful, right? Because France had just gotten rid of their dictatorship, their monarchy, and became, I think, a constitutional republic. And then, not too long after that, Napoleon kind of seized power as a despot, basically. So
yeah, I mean, just looking back at this photo here, this is a massive building complex. and all of a sudden they do huge construction, dig up the ground, and all of a sudden you can just see so much more of the building underneath. Now, let's dive into the mud flood disaster theory, and they always claim that this mud flood was man-made. This was not natural. So is this possible? Well, let's look through history. Were there massive destructions that were not natural throughout history? We were talking about the Great Flood and all that. That may have been natural, maybe it wasn't, but maybe it was. However, there's other things. This is actually from a presentation I did a couple of weeks ago. I'm just going to pull this one up because a couple of these slides are pretty relevant. So here is, come on. Oh, I guess it won't show. Maybe if I, okay, well, I'm just going to leave it at this size here. So we've got ancient nuclear war. There's actually a lot of evidence, and this is a whole other podcast in of itself, but there's this concept called vitrification. Well, it's not a concept, it's a real phenomenon called vitrification, which is the melting of rock into glass, which means that happens at extraordinary high heat. And you've actually got a lot of ancient bunkers around the world. You've actually got skeletons and ancient burials of people that have their skeletons actually still had radiation on them. And we're going to get into why that could have happened. Well, ancient nuclear war, in the Brahmastra, created by the god Brahma, was an ancient nuclear bomb detailed in the Bhagavad Gita, Vedic texts from ancient India. And I'm going to quote these ancient texts. And remember, these are thousands of years old, these Vedic texts. And listen how accurately they describe a nuclear war and a nuclear bomb detonation. So here's the quote. A single projectile charged with all the power in the universe. It was an unknown weapon, an iron thunderbolt, a gigantic messenger of death, which reduced to ashes an entire race. There is neither a counterattack nor a defense that could stop it. That was part of the quote. And then the weapon produced was, quote, an incandescent column of smoke and flame as bright as 10,000 suns that rose in all of its splendor. After corpses were burned as to be unrecognizable, their hair and nails fell out. Pottery broke without any apparent cause, and the birds turned white. After a few hours, all foodstuffs were infected. Any target hit by the Brahmastra would be utterly destroyed. Land would become barren and lifeless. Rainfall would cease, and infertility in humans and animals would follow for eons of time. That's exactly what happens in a nuclear fallout. Like, guys,
Their nails and hair fell out.
Come on. It's radiation.
The food got infected.
Like, this is
oof.
Right?
That's scary accurate.
It's scary accurate. Ancient Vedic texts talking about that. That's a whole other podcast. It would be really fascinating to get into.
Robert Oppenheimer, when he launched the first
right here,
successful
buddy.
nuclear bomb. Okay. I'm one slide behind.
No, it's all good. Brandon, we're on the same wavelength, my friends. So this is the modern nuclear bomb. Robert Oppenheimer is quoting the Bhagavad Gita, which he says, now I am become death, the destroyer of worlds. This was in 1945 when Oppenheimer was asked, in 1945, when he was asked if the nuclear blast, the first test that they did in Alamogordo, if it was the first ever, and he said yes, in modern times. So even Oppenheimer knew that there was nuclear war in ancient times, and a lot of these elite, knowledgeable people throughout history were very, very aware of these incredible parts of our history that we are not taught about, which is interesting.
Well, Oppenheimer was German, and and he defected.
Yep.
And the Nazis were all about what is ancient. They did believe that there was technology that was lost. So that's what Indiana Jones is all about. Looking for powerful ancient artifacts. So
Yep, the Nazis were all about that. So what about modern times? Could we create a quote unquote natural disaster that's actually man-made, but it would look and kind of feel like a natural disaster? Well, absolutely. Technology called HAARP, HAARP. And this is a video describing what HAARP weather modification, can do. Once again, found on Rumble because man, YouTube is just not cutting it.
Well, we talk about narratives, right, Chris? And if we have the power to modify weather, and when I say we, I mean collectively as a whole, and it's a constant sports game out there. There's different powers that are competing with each other, and then there are certain narratives that we get force fed that would suggest that these things are out of our control. But if we're playing God with our weather,
Which we
some of
are.
those narratives that we take very seriously and are trying to combat, I don't understand. It just seems all mind blowing to me without getting into any specifics.
Well, let's take a look at this video.
I did radiotomography with 30 watts, looking for oil in the ground. I found 26 oil wells over a 9-state area, and 100% of the time was accurate with just 30 watts of power beaming straight into solid rock. HARP uses 1 billion watts beamed straight into the ionosphere for experiments. Picture these strings on the piano as layers of the earth. Each one has its own frequency. What we used to do is beam radio waves into the ground, and it would vibrate any strings that were present in the ground. We might get a sound back like, and we'd say, that's natural gas. We might get a sound back like, and we say that's crude oil. We were able to identify each frequency. We accomplished this with just 30 watts of radio power. If you do this with 1 billion watts, the vibrations are so violent that the entire piano would shake. In fact, the whole house would shake. In fact, the vibrations could be so severe underground that could even cause an earthquake.
Yeah. So there you go. Frequency, resonant frequency. I mean, it's amazing what frequency can do. And the Tartarians supposedly were extremely aware of this these phenomena of frequency. Now, here's an alternative theory as to the mud floods, and it's interesting. I want you to take a look at this, Brandon. I didn't know that this could happen with trees. So the theory is that a lot of the major old growth trees around I don't know 100 150 years ago, whenever roughly, there was a huge mass cutting down of trees all around the world, maybe more in certain areas, and these trees actually ended up sprouting up so much water from the earth that it flooded a lot of parts of the earth. And if you don't know, if I didn't know if that was possible, but there's this video of a tree shooting out water when someone's cut into it. I haven't seen this before. Brandon, you're a woodsman. Let
Well,
me.
yeah. So I mean, I'm no expert, but I have worked in arboriculture and forestry for some time, as a side hustle there. But yeah, so basically trees are always pulling water out of the soil, right? The roots are pulling water and they're sending them up to the canopy, as to which it goes up and it comes back down with the sugars. So they are an elevator of water.
Interesting.
Yeah, and you know what? I have a dear friend who's a conservation officer here, and he was asking about the all the old growth that got logged, because we know that the old growth are also the teachers of the forest.
Mm-hmm.
They do educate the other trees how to get through catastrophes, and it's funny that we removed them all. But to think of the technology that we had when we did the mass logging, that is such a feat.
Yeah.
That he was saying, he was like, it really, he was out in BC and he's like, I can't even fathom how they were able to do that much logging back in the day.
That's
It's almost,
interesting.
yeah, I'd never really thought
Wow.
about it. And I was like, it's almost like we don't live in the same dimension or something's been forgotten. So let's see what we got here.
Yeah.
The roots of trees tap into the groundwater beneath them. Though you have to wonder, when you look at some of these massive world trees that were completely cut down, and then all these floods, and the mud flood, and all of that, you have to wonder if something like this could be linked together with it. Perhaps this is where all the water came from those floods. Perhaps once those massive world trees were cut, they began expelling water from them at a rapid rate that flooded this realm. until the water levels receded. Perhaps it could have been something completely different, though. I don't claim to know all the answers. But what I can do is encourage you to do your own research. Look for these intriguing and fascinating things about our realm, hidden in our past.
So for the listening audience, we're watching water shoot out of a tree at a pretty incredible pressure and rate. So just imagine again, all these major trees being logged and cut down, which I'm glad you brought that up, Brandon, because I live in BC, and all the time I'm driving on the highway and there's helicopters all the time flying over me. They're logging helicopters. They're always carrying, logs or equipment, things like that. Infrastructure is almost always the easiest way to get. We're in a mountain in the Rockies or just in the mountains in general. It's hard to get things around. So now modern times, the easiest way is by helicopter. Otherwise, you got to build a road to go everywhere. And that's a lot of work. So when you said that, I started to think like, yeah, wait, how did they like 100 years ago, 150 years ago? And these trees were the biggest. The ones we're logging now aren't even anywhere close to as big as those old growth. Wow.
Well, I mean, the story is that they used, they used saws and then primitive chainsaws eventually, horses, and then they would run them down the rivers. But you have to remember, you're logging mountains, so you have to get it. You have
That's
to
the
go up,
thing.
you have to cut it down, you have to drag it down. And to tell you the truth, like just try going to the backcountry and collecting some firewood, the big dead logs,
Yeah.
Chris and I have them over both of our shoulders, and you look at a hill and you're like, oh my goodness, you have to get up that hill and get back to camp. You're like, it's going to be worth it once we get there. But yeah, it's not easy. So, maybe that doesn't resonate with you. Maybe that seems, maybe we've lost you on that one, but if you do think about it, and this is coming from a conservation officer who I was having this conversation with, that's when it really struck me of like, you would have known about logging practices, and that he said most of North America is secondary growth now. Most of it has been
Oh
logged
yeah.
out in the past.
Oh yeah.
So, and he was saying, he's like, there was a mass logging back in the day. He's like, it just shocks me that the towns weren't even that big back then. So where did you
Yeah.
get the support to do all of this? So
There's
very
a lot.
interesting stuff with that.
Yeah. I could go on about that for a while. It really does. The more I've learned about that, the more it baffles me. But let's keep going here because we got a lot to cover and not too much time left in the episode because we got to get into the energy. This is the crazy stuff. This is the
I
real
mean,
juice.
we just keep going down and down and down. That's
This
crazy part about Tartaria, people.
Tartaria, it got to be one of the most fun rabbit holes I've been down in a while. I got to say, folks, a lot of the stuff I present on the show are things that I have been coming across honestly for the last 6-7 years of my life. And there's maybe new things that I'm pretty impressed by and stuff like that. Tartaria that's a real new one for me. And loving these podcasts because it forces me to go down these rabbit holes all over again. And for this one, this is just all brand new. So check out
And
this.
I thought it was just a delicious sauce to go with my fish.
I meant to mention that in the intro. One of the only remnants we have of the Tartarian Empire's tartar sauce.
Give them mayonnaise and relish.
Makes me want some fish and chips. All right. So here's some individual research, but I've seen this repeated actually on quite a few sites here. So I'm going to read off a bit of what the energy source that the Tartarian Empire was using, and it's quite incredible because there's definitely aspects to this that we can tie into other pieces of science and history. So there's something going on here that's got some weight to it. So here we go. The Tartarians had free energy. Churches, cathedrals, mosques, and other buildings of worship were originally etheric power stations, water stations, and sound resonating acoustical healing centers. I agree with that. And I've thought this for a long time. And I'm going to do another whole episode on that, but we'll get into it. Anyway, let's keep going here. The buildings that religionists use as places of worship in our present day originally functioned as hospitals during the reign of the Tartarian Empire. Tartarian buildings are more similar in function to pyramids and temples found across the world than what we are led to believe by mainstream peer-reviewed science. in the photo we're seeing here, there's a lot of these cymatic circular glass carvings, structures.
They look like sound patterns
They
to
are,
me,
they're
right?
cymatics. Those are
That's what
cymatics.
cymatic means, yeah?
Exactly. It's vibration manifested physically, and these are absolutely cymatic shapes. They're all over most ancient cathedrals and Gothic cathedrals. They're all over the world. Cymatics are everywhere, all over church architecture. It's incredible. I've been seeing them all over the place here in Malta, but they're worldwide. Even in North America, we still have them in stained glass windows. You see them everywhere. It's incredible, all over churches. So continuing. Through ingenious engineering, intricate architecture, and advanced technology, the Tartarians transformed the Earth into a circuit board powered by the ether, just like the ancients did with the pyramids and temples, which, yeah, again, I kind of suspected that they did with the ancients, certainly in Egypt and the pyramids around the world. Continuing on here, the crosses on top of Tartarian buildings were used as etheric electrical antennas, which were connected to the rebar embedded throughout the building structure. Okay, you can see the building photos here on the left. All of these buildings have these either circular or like pole or triangular tips at the top of all the, I don't know, columns that shoot out of these buildings. You got the rectangular structures, and then you have these large, higher rectangular structures that typically go into a triangle shape, or sometimes a circular and then a sort of tip, this triangular tip at the end. But it looks like they're gathering some form of energy. And I've heard people like Michael Tellinger talk about this actually many years ago. So it's cool to see this connection coming again. Continuing on here. Streetlights that existed during the reign of the Tartarian Empire were tall etheric electrical antennas. These streetlights harnessed the power of the ether, which caused the gases inside the upper bulb to ionize and fluoresce to light up. For all we know, the upper bulbs that sat on the top of the Tartarian streetlights found inside the homes of the Tartars themselves were not made from glass, but quite possibly from a type of quartz crystal, which actually makes a lot of sense. We've talked about piezoelectric energy in other episodes. We've talked about how quartz crystal can generate electricity and therefore could generate light. Absolutely possible. Continuing on. If the pop culture phenomenon started by the Radium Girls are any indication, then these bulbs could have contained various substances such as mercury or radium, which reacted with the ether, or maybe the bulbs contained nothing at all, and the quartz crystal itself is what reacted with the ether. Really incredible stuff. Now, there's a whole amazing phenomenon with Tartarian fireplaces and chimneys. This is interesting because, once again, there are leftover ancient, well, not even so ancient, but just old aristocratic or elite buildings, people that have had these elaborate buildings that maybe they re-inhabited, and a lot of these fireplaces aren't functioning. They don't have they don't function as any fireplace. So I'm going to play a video that explains what they may have actually been used for. Oh, and before I do, here's an interesting diagram of all of these structures. Just look at the similarities. They show pyramids, they show obelisks, they show churches, they show cathedrals, they show all of these buildings, these styles of building that we see all over the planet, everywhere. Every continent has buildings built like this. And look at the similarities with the tops and the tips of all the major, rectangular, or the tops of all these buildings have these sometimes of a cross shaped or a diamond shaped or triangular shaped tip to them. Once again, is it to like a lightning rod, or is it the equivalent of a lightning rod that extracts energy not just from the ether, but with Nikola Tesla, when he built the Tesla Tower, he's extracting energy from the ionosphere of our planet, and then it connects to the earth and the ground, and it generates an infinite flow of free energy. And he built that in reference to the Great Pyramid of Giza. He was obsessed with the Egyptians, as most geniuses are. because they recognized the power and the knowledge from that time. And so he was extracting energy from the ether, also known as essentially the ionosphere, or the ether is everything. It's the energy of the entire universe, essentially. So anyway, this is just an
Well, you know
interesting
what? Tesla
diagram.
too. I think it's important to understand too that Tesla was a Serbian. So if I were to look back at that map, I wonder how close the Tartarian map came to Serbia, because perhaps he was inspired by remnants or texts, or even direct influence by elders.
That's
It's
a
just
good
very
point.
interesting to think about.
That's a really good point. I was just in Serbia on a layover and saw Nikola Tesla's face on Serbian airline aircrafts, which I love because he's not even taught in our history classes yet. He's probably one of the most important scientists in the last
I
100,
know, I know. It's
150
all about
years.
Einstein when we talk about great thinkers, which
And
is, nothing
and
to take away.
it's something to take away from Einstein, to give Einstein credit. When Einstein was asked what's it like to be the smartest man in the world, he said, I don't know, ask Nikola Tesla. So he was the
Yes.
first to admit that Tesla, and him and Tesla were friends. Like Einstein never he didn't pull like an Edison on Tesla. But anyway, again, that's a whole other
Mhm.
podcast. So let's watch what these fireplaces were actually all about. It's pretty fascinating because this goes down to another really cool rabbit hole I did not expect. Hold on.
I lived in an old
End-time
house.
news.
It had fireplaces in every room except the bathroom. The realtor told me that the fireplace cannot be used because it wasn't built properly. I thought it was strange. The Tartarian fireplaces did not burn. Fireplaces were as spectacular as the buildings they stood in. But unlike the way we use fireplaces today, the fireplaces themselves were not designed to burn anything. The chimneys were not used to draw smoke out of the fireplace, and out of the house's structure were not used primarily to provide any structural support. The reinforcement in the house was connected to the dome of the tower on the roof, which was quite possibly filled with various substances such as mercury, radium, or quartz crystal, and metal bars sticking out from the top and sides of the building. Everything was then connected with the metal back sheeting found inside the original Tatar fireplaces and chimneys. Metal poles sticking out of the upper and sides of houses and other Tatar buildings acted as ethereal electric antennas that harnessed the power of the ether to channel this free energy into the chimney. The air ventilation shafts, air ducts, found in the rooms of the house were connected to the chimney. Ionized air, along with rising and falling currents of hot and cold air, created a pressure electric vacuum inside the chimney. During the winter, chimneys acted as pressure electric vacuums, emitting captured heat inside the chimney out over the fireplace. During the summer, the process would be reversed and the fireplace and ventilation pipes would absorb heat into the fireplace and air ducts, connected to the inside of the chimney inside the house and through ionized air from the etheric electrically charged metal backboard. Inside the KO mine would push the heat up the chimney and out the house. Reinforcement, dome, roof towers and metal bars sticking out of the sides of the house acted as a spider, attracting ether and concentrating etheric energy throughout the house. Just like spiders can grow and survive without food and water if they touch their web, Tartarians were able to live without food and water provided they remained inside their etherically charged home.
So that's mind-blowing in a lot of ways. Now, of course,
Bananas.
it's bananas. Like, let us know in the comments. What do you guys think? Like, is that bananas, or is there some truth in there? Now,
Okay.
there's
Wait, hold on. Let me break this down. Let me break this
okay.
down.
Okay.
Please. So they're saying that the free energy that's all around us, the ether, which I think we all kind of know, right? Like inherently we kind of feel this energy around us. And to think that burning wood and coal and oil is the way to do it. Fireplaces are dirty things. You have to sweep them out. They're
Yeah.
full of soot and tar. So they're saying that, yeah, okay, we draw in the heat from the ether, we push the heat out in the summertime. That's great. Inside, this energy also nourishes our body to the point where basically we can be self-sustaining. Well, what evidence will we have of that phenomena? Well, a lot of monks, they say, if you talk to some really, really, really hardcore Buddhists, will say that the monks who practice the hardest and sit out in the sunlight get all of their energy from the sunlight and can exist for months, if not
Years.
indefinitely,
Yeah.
off of their practice. What is that if it's not connecting with the powers of the universe, right? So really, the ether, to my understanding, is just kind of the fabric of the universe. Which, why wouldn't it be all giving? I mean, I like to believe that. I would like to believe that.
Yeah, I mean, I believe from my own experience, my own spiritual practices, that literally everything is consciousness, and the ether, in a sense, is alive. The whole universe is alive. Everything is alive. And so, yeah, why wouldn't it just be infinite energy, infinite sustenance all the time? I think it makes sense that we're conditioned to believe that everything is scarce, everything is completely lacking, so that we have to go buy it, and we have to be in service to an authority to get all these things. When in reality, it's everywhere, it's all the time, it's constant. And I think we're breaking through at some point, because stuff like this, shows like this, you beautiful people watching this, letting us know in the comments. Like, the comments are getting better and better each episode. I'm just loving them. To be honest, this whole Tartarian episode, really for me, started with a comment on a couple of episodes previous, that one of the beautiful watchers of the show suggested I look into some of these interesting channels here on Rumble, and here we are now. That led me on a rabbit hole into this area of the Tartarian Empire. So, I think we're getting back into that mindset of infinite energy extracting from the ether, and all that jazz. We've got a couple more videos before we wrap up here, so let's shoot through these. This is really interesting. Some guy discovered an ancient plug or socket on a church that kind of promotes this theory of churches being a lot more than places of worship. And it's probably going to play another commercial, so I'll just
Bye.
Yeah, actually, it's already muted. That's great. All right, and here we go.
So we've got a 130-foot building, which is supposedly a church, and it's been grounded with heavy-duty grounding cable to stop the antennas that are at the top from transferring energy down to the bottom where the plug socket is.
Oh,
Right? That looks like a plug socket.
What do you know about Tartaria? Another plug power point right there. See that? We've been lied to. 1692.
Wow.
And this place had power.
Oh man.
I mean, it makes sense when you look at the. I mean, look at the.
And they need to ground it on both sides to stop the antennas from taking energy from the ether, which is above, and transferring it to ground level. Sorry about the blurriness. Transferring the ether from above to the ground level. So they create a ground loop which runs up all the way to the top of the building.
It's so cool.
Connecting to the antennas and then back down the other side, and
So
stops the energy from being, or stops people from getting electrocuted, basically.
Well, it implies that they knew.
For them. It's got nothing to do with
well, Chris, like,
strikes.
think of Versailles, think of all these amazing Notre Dame, all these amazing structures. One of the other things that people talk about too is that, where were the educated workers where were the universities, the engineers? Did they even have the structure in place? I know there would have been some people who would have been taught, and they said that they were taught by their mentors back in the day, and that you would learn more hands-on. But to do these incredible feats of architecture with such precision, I mean, look at all this. It suggests that we did have high knowledge that was forgotten, even as recent as 1690. 1690, that's like a blink of the eye. That's, literally count back on your ancestors. That's like less than 20 people, maybe
Well,
maybe 50. I don't know. I'm not going to do the math right now, but let's just think about it. That's not a lot of ancestors to get back to
no. And
1690.
that's supposed to be the Dark Ages, and keep going back from that. Or not. That's not exactly the Dark Ages, but basically before that is the Dark Ages. And now I'm like, well, maybe they weren't the Dark. I mean,
Well,
who the
that's
hell?
the
Who the hell
thing with
knows? Like
Tartaria too. They say, did the
that.
Dark Ages ever happen? That's another
Exactly.
big one. And maybe the Dark Ages, and just I don't know, you can call BS on it, but maybe the Dark Ages didn't happen. Maybe the Dark Ages were the great scrubbing of this narrative of Tartaria.
100%. So I wanted just to show and illustrate wireless electricity, just like Tesla probably rediscovered or just brought back from Tartaria and probably from even more ancient times. Here's a gentleman just showing this in about 30 seconds with a homemade Tesla coil, essentially.
This is a solid-state Tesla coil of 2 kilowatt power, output voltage 3 lakhs and frequency 1 megahertz. It produces wireless energy, which is made in my lab recently. This rotates using ion propulsion theory. Actually, this is a high voltage plasma flame and produces 2000 degrees centigrade. Why I am not getting shocked? Because this wire is already connected to earth.
So if you saw earlier in the clip here, he's holding an unplugged light,
Yeah, like Tesla did.
like right here in his hand, and it's lighting up. This is
We
what the
have pictures of
Tartarians.
Tesla.
Oh
There's the
yeah,
famous one where he's holding the light bulb. It's on. We
Yeah.
have wireless. We know about that, and it gets stripped back to us being like, just put your iPhone on the charger. You don't have to plug it in.
Oh
And it's
my
like,
God,
oh
we
wow,
got wireless charging in the year 2023. We're so advanced.
wow. Meanwhile, Nikola Tesla's like, dude, we don't need wires. Think of all the wires out there. In North America, if you live
Oh
in
my
North America,
God.
when you walk out, it's a rat's nest. We are one windstorm away from this whole thing falling down. How do you insulate the grid? Get rid of the grid. Go
Yes.
back in time to this technology, use this technology. I mean, in Europe, at least you guys bury your wires, but in most of the world, we got them up on dead trees hanging with wires. I mean, it's a mess.
It's a mess, and it's so unsophisticated. And one solar flare, and we're all effed.
Yeah. I hear that it's kind of like an old Christmas tree or an old Christmas light string that if one bulb goes, they all go out. It would make a lot more sense to use the natural ether or the natural conductivity of the earth.
I
And
know.
it's just, why are we not there? Is it all corporate greed?
Is it deeper than that?
Is it deeper? Why is the question. Why is really all we can be certain about. But
this episode is only making me ask more questions.
Oh my goodness, guys,
Oh,
comment down
man.
below.
Let us
If you're
know.
enjoying this conversation, please, I know you have your thoughts. We want to hear them.
Yeah.
I'm Chris, you know what? I'm making it official, okay? The next time we do it, on the last video, I'm going to go through the comments. I'm going to find my favorite comment, and we're going to do a viewer shout out, and that's what we're going to do. We're going to rank the comments. We're going to have a little fun thing at the end of it. We're going to start some segments because you know what? This is all entertainment purposes. We're not historians. We're not, we're just two guys having some fun here.
Having a fireside chat just like we do when we're camping. So we got one last video for you beautiful people. This one is really interesting. I've skipped ahead to about 6 minutes in. Everything we've watched today is on Rumble, not one single thing on YouTube. And I won't even get into that now. But this show, also Ancient Mysteries Unearthed, we'll be moving on to Rumble as well. We will also have a presence on YouTube, but we're going to move on to Rumble because there's just so much more you can access. There's no censorship, etc. Anyway, last video. Basically, this is video footage. We don't know if it's real or not, but it's harder to fake old footage. And this is old footage from, it looks like some of the World's Fairs that could have been these Tartarian constructions. And what you're going to see is the depiction of the incredible electricity and power and light that these civilizations supposedly could generate. So let's take a look. I don't think there's any talking over this, so we'll kind of narrate over top of it. So this looks like a top of a just a top of a standard, not standard, but a top of a building that you'd see like maybe like a church tower, but it's lit up. It's probably being filmed at night on a very old camera. So all you're seeing like black and white outlines, but the white is just like glowing.
I think what's
it's all
important to
glowing.
remember too is that when we look at this, we're not saying that we don't have advanced technology today, you know, and that it's just different. They had a different way
tech
about it.
Yeah.
They weren't burning coal. It looks like they weren't suppressing a lot either. It looked like they were celebrating their technology.
Look at this. This looks like a celebration of their tech.
And if you really wanted your empire to thrive, you would make it free for your people. You wouldn't want us digging ditches when we could be, you know, off pondering the universe and creating new advancements. Ultimately, a higher standard of living is going to be a better thing for your civilization.
Always. Just look at the light and the illumination here from these buildings are all outlined by light. Like the whole building glows. So it's not just like they've strapped on a bunch of lights on the outside. It looks like some of the structure itself, it emanates light.
Well, I would wonder if the ether, right? I don't know if the ether, I don't know anything about it, but I don't think it would be dependent on the sun if it's kind of the fabric of the universe.
Exactly.
Right? So it would be able to be produced at night.
So you can just see these, like, just these illuminated buildings, like every corner, every column, everything is just glowing, and some are brighter than others, so it creates a beautiful contrast. I mean, it's stunning. It's absolutely beautiful.
And you know what? If you can heat your home without burning wood, right?
Yeah.
And don't forget, our electricity, we're still mainly burning things today.
Mm-hmm. It's all explosion energy.
Right. Combustions.
Combustion.
So to think of free energy coming from the ether that can heat your home, sustain your body, and give free energy to you and your neighbors. I mean, that's got to be the answer to most of our problems, no?
Yeah, of course it is. And you can heal yourself too. You know, it's everything.
Less desperation is going to lead to happier people. You know, and frankly, I think a celebrated culture is what I'm looking at here. It looks like a celebration.
It does.
Now, I don't know. Maybe the Tartarians were ruthless barbarians who had high technology. I'm not really sure, but I'm going to guess if you're giving away free energy, that you're gonna value the people in your societies, in your communities. And I think we're moving away from that, unfortunately. I think we want inherently, usually when we want to be good, we want to be together, but a lot of times right now it feels like we take one step forward to take two steps back and fight amongst each other.
It's competition, division.
Things. Right.
You know.
Gone are the debates in the cafes. We can't accept our neighbors anymore, and this to me just seems like you can't build a free empire like that, a global empire like that, without a strong sense of love and community, for sure.
100%. So I mean, the video goes on to show other things, but I'll leave it at that today. It was really the lights and the illumination I wanted to.
So I have a burning question, Chris, and I'm going to throw it out to our audience. If there was a giant mud flood, okay, for whatever the reason or the cause was, which if you have your own theories on it, I'd love to hear it. But if there was a giant mud flood, how would this go about not making it into the books? I mean, wouldn't we all of our ancestors, every drop of blood that runs through our veins, wouldn't those ancestors of ours go through that same hardship? Because if it was a global catastrophe, why then would the advanced civilization be the one that struggled or the one that lost? Perhaps it's like in The Simpsons where, you know, the aliens come and Lisa wishes for world peace, and then, you know, Mo finds a board with a nail in it, and they don't know how to combat that because they're more aggressive. So, you know, all hail the board with the nail. Maybe our ancestors were more aggressive, and that war wasn't necessarily ingrained in the Tartarians. However, if they're theorized that they built walls to keep warring people out, then I don't know. What do you think? Why would it not be reflective of our civilization about the troubles that sank this civilization?
Yeah, and it seems that our civilization currently right now is the warring civilization, is the one that erased, at least allegedly erased, the Tartarian Empire from the history books. So it would make more sense that the Tartarians were probably the more peaceful, probably the more diplomatic, and the more giving of their technology and their free energy. And it looks like basically like longevity of life, quality of life, a real sense of beauty, a sense of not just architectural beauty, but you got the sense that there's a love and a want for beauty. You know, I've been traveling through the Mediterranean. One of the parts I love so much about the Mediterranean culture is that it's all about like romancing life. You know, like the arts, you know, making love to life. Just like the food is an artistic experience. The music is an artistic experience. The architecture is everything. The conversation with people is like poetry. That's what life's really supposed to be like. And it feels like that's what, you know, at least parts of this, perhaps this place called Tartaria, you know, embodied that and has been erased from the history books because the powers that be want us to only think in one particular way, which is this dominating pyramid sort of scheme of a couple of people controlling the masses, and us just being we should just be lucky to have the bare minimum, and that's kind of what we're given is the
Taking
bare
away your
minimum.
human rights
Here are your
and selling them
scraps.
back to you as privileges.
Yeah, you should be lucky to have scraps and just be fighting for life. When we can see that clearly, and with Nikola Tesla, we have examples of we would have had free energy, we would have had wireless electricity, we would have had with Royal Raymond Rife, we would have cured all diseases. You know, we can keep going down the list of people that were going to give this to us, and then it didn't happen. So, hey, that's
You know
just the
what?
world we live in.
For all you viewers, you beautiful, beautiful, beautiful souls out there, if you're in a condo that's, you know, concrete, cold, with big glass windows that overlook into your neighbor's window, and, you know, your idea of romancing beauty is going out and skipping the dishes and bringing in like a piece of styrofoam with some slop in it, um, don't let don't let the zombification of life that I think is almost by design, you know, find the beauty, grow a plant inside, create a lasting relationship, do something nice for someone, find the beauty in your life, cook a beautiful meal for somebody or for yourself, take the time to enjoy it. Maybe you have a beautiful nap on a day you're tired and you just honor that feeling. Do something that's beautiful, get out in nature, you know, all the straight lines. If you notice the Tartarians, there's not a lot of straight lines. And in modern society, yeah, it's all straight lines. And nature's not in a straight line. So go look at the trees, watch the squirrels, look at the birds, enjoy the wind in your hair, enjoy the beauty of life. Because, like we were saying, with if the ether exists, then positive self-talk, positivity, loving and embracing, these are all going to have huge ramifications on the world around us. So when I watch something like this, I get inspired to send positivity, and I want to take the time right now because, you know, we might have 100 views on this, we might have 10,000 views on this. So to that audience, this is just like having a packed theater. Really, you are amazing. Thank you for watching our fireside chat. Okay, we hope to see you again soon. Leave a comment because I'm going to start rating the comments, and we're going to have a little shout out at the end of every episode to just show how much we appreciate you guys. Thanks for subscribing, share, like, just share it amongst your friends if you liked it. Get the conversation going. Leave us those comments down below. Stay tuned for Chris's content. He's out in Greece checking out ancient weird structures all around with stories of giants and everything. I mean, it just keeps getting weirder and weirder, but that's what we love. There's mystery and magic in this world, and we love you being here with us. Chris, last thoughts for our audience.
Yeah, well said, Brandon. Thank you so much for that. And yes, so much love out to all of you watching and listening. We really appreciate you. And it is all about what you think and what you feel emanates outwards. So your internal reality creates your external reality. Don't forget that. Every thought you have is important. Every action you take is important. And yeah, you know, it might seem like everything's out of our hands these days, but trust me, it absolutely matters what you're doing here in this life and on this planet, and how you interact with others and how you treat yourself and other people and this planet. So just wanted to send a lot of love out to you. Thank you so much for watching. You can also sign up for the Ancient Mysteries Unearthed community by going to ancientmysteriesunearthed.com. $9.99 a month or 33 cents a day, however you want to break that down. And you can become not only a contributing member to this platform, which honestly helps us create more content, and it helps me travel to more places around the world to really uncover this absolutely mind-boggling history and story of who we really are. And not only that, but how can we integrate that into our very day-to-day life now? So thanks you again for watching, and so much love to you all. And
Chris, I love you, buddy.
I love you
buddy.
too, buddy. I
And
love you so much,
you know
man.
what? We feel your love and support, all of you, and we're sending love out to you, like Chris said. So stay tuned, and until the next time. Wow, I got a good feeling at the end of this show. Wow,
Me
I'm all
too.
gushy now.
Yeah, me too. Something about those tartars.
I know. Yeah, the ether's coming through or something. Wow.
All right, everyone. Thanks for watching, and we'll catch you next time on Ancient Mysteries Unearthed.